My entitled mother insisted that I relinquish ownership of my house to her, arguing that my younger sister was expecting a child and thus needed it more than I did. At 31 years old, I find myself in a difficult position with my 28-year-old sister, who has long been the favored child in our mother's eyes, though not so much with our father. From as far back as I can remember, our parents' relationship was strained. They eventually divorced when I was a teenager after my mother had an affair with an old high school boyfriend. Ever since, she has exhibited controlling, manipulative, and narcissistic behaviors. My sister, unfortunately, became a carbon copy of her, embodying all those same traits. Our mother always acted as though she had absolute authority over me, snapping her fingers to command me around like a pet, which was both demeaning and frustrating. My sister consistently supported her, so it came as no surprise when I chose to live with my father full-time after the divorce, while my sister remained with our mother. Both my mother and sister shared similar personalities and had largely ceased communication with my father, except when it came to financial matters. In contrast, I aligned more with my father, who was very business-minded. He began teaching me his trade when I was just 16, and I became quite proficient in it. After 12 years of dedicated work under his guidance, I was made a partner in his company, and everything seemed to be going smoothly. However, about 8 months ago, tragedy struck when my father, who had been a heavy smoker for much of his life and had become somewhat immunocompromised, succumbed to COVID-19 at the age of 60. This event forced me to reconnect with my mother and sister for the first time in years, as we attended a socially distanced funeral via video call. In accordance with my father's wishes, he was cremated and buried in a local cemetery without a traditional ceremony, so there was no body or casket present. My sister appeared to grieve genuinely, but my mother's demeanor was entirely different, which didn't surprise me given her history. The last time my mother saw my father, she had berated him, accusing him of owing her more money and threatening to sue him. He had dismissed her accusations, explaining that he had always paid alimony and child support as required by law, and even contributed $30,000 to my sister's college fund. 10 years after their divorce, a judge ruled that he was no longer obligated to provide financial support to my mother, who was by no means financially struggling. She held a steady job that she had maintained for nearly 3 decades, fully owned the old family home we once shared, and even rented out 2 rooms on Airbnb regularly, proving that she was not in need of additional funds. Shortly after the funeral, during what was referred to as my father's will reading, it became clear that he had anticipated his heavy smoking might lead to his demise and had prepared accordingly. He had bequeathed nearly all of his assets, including most of his money, to his business and the family home. My sister received a 2015 Nissan Altima and about $10,000 in cash, while my mother was left with only $1,000 and a few other items she had been claiming were rightfully hers since the divorce. The bulk of the estate was mine, and I now live in the house my father left me, along with my girlfriend. My sister, on the other hand, had transitioned from completing 2 years of community college to relying on her boyfriend and working only part-time online for several years. During this period, she became pregnant but tragically suffered a traumatic miscarriage, a fact I only learned about after the funeral because we had virtually no contact, and no one else informed me. When the lockdown hit, her boyfriend's job began to downsize gradually, eventually reducing his hours to part-time. This financial strain affected both of them, forcing him to encourage her to seek better employment as he attempted to secure a second job. Despite their efforts to be cautious, she became pregnant, referring to the baby as her miracle baby. One evening, I received an unexpected knock at my door. When I answered, I was unpleasantly greeted by both my mother and sister. Without so much as a greeting, they walked right into my home and made themselves comfortable in my living room. My girlfriend and I exchanged confused looks as I questioned their sudden visit. My sister was giggling and wandering around, opening doors and seemingly taking a tour of my home. Meanwhile, my mother plopped herself down on my sofa and snapped her fingers, demanding a cold bottle of water. My girlfriend promptly fetched the water for her, but I couldn't help but ask why they had come by uninvited. My sister appeared to be in high spirits, ignoring my question and continuing to snoop around the house. Before long, she exclaimed from down the hall, "Mommy, it's perfect." Yes, she still referred to our mother as Mommy. My mother then addressed me directly, declaring that it was time for me to give up my brotherly duty. Confused and frustrated, I asked her what she meant. She proceeded to explain that since my father had passed away, the house should rightfully belong to her as his only spouse. However, she offered me an ultimatum: I could either buy a new house, as I made plenty of money, or allow my sister to live here by occupying just one room and covering all the bills until I decided to move out. My girlfriend and I had read enough Reddit stories to anticipate how this confrontation would unfold, so we were mentally prepared for the conflict that was about to ensue. Taking a deep breath, I firmly stated, "That's not happening. You don't get to order me around, especially not in my own goddamn home." I reminded her that while I did make money, I was saving it for when I truly needed it, much like my father had done. My mother responded by snapping her fingers again, her voice loud and commanding. "I am your mother, and you will do as I say because I brought you into this world. I'm the one in charge here. As far as you're concerned, I am God. That means when I say jump, you say how high. This house is rightfully mine, and your sister will live here. Consider this your formal eviction. But since I'm being gracious, I'll give you 2 weeks to pack your bags and transfer the deed to me." In the back of my mind, I struggled to process whether this was real, but then I grabbed my cell phone and began dialing. My mother quickly stood up, yelling, "What are you doing?" I retorted, "I'm doing what I should have done, calling the cops to get you out of my house." Immediately, she swiped at me, managing to knock my phone out of my hands, and attempted to stomp on it. However, I was swift enough to snatch it back before she could. "That's it. If you don't leave, I will force you out myself," I declared. In response, my mother slapped me across the face, and I retaliated with 2 hard backhanded slaps, causing her to fall back onto the couch. She covered her reddening face, smeared makeup, in total shock, and yelled, "How dare you!" I resumed dialing my phone, stating firmly that if she didn't leave, the police would be called to remove her by force. My sister then barged in between us, holding her arms out and pleading for me to do the right thing and be a good big brother. Frustrated, I snapped back, "Oh, really? I'm the bad sibling? Last I checked, I've been the one working since I was a teenager, doing all the chores while you just sat around playing video games or chatting with your friends all day. You used to steal my hard-earned money to go shopping after you've already spent your allowance. You're a complete mooch and thief, so I don't owe you anything. Now both of you need to leave before I decide to dial this last number." My sister began to tear up, crying like a baby, and begged, "Mommy, make him stop." Our mother then hugged her and kissed her cheeks, giving me a death glare. She seemed to think she had outsmarted me and said, "You know, if you do call the police, I can just tell them that you hit me and maybe say that you wanted to do a lot worse to a poor pregnant girl in need." I cut her off with a raised hand, declaring, "Just stop. If you haven't noticed, my girlfriend has been recording almost this whole time, which means we have evidence of you assaulting me first and threatening to lie to the police. I don't think that would be good for your reputation at your job or your Airbnb. If looks could kill, you'd have blown me up like a tactical nuke." She quickly deflated, grabbing my crying sister by the arm and dragging her out. My sister, acting like a complete toddler, broke free from our mother's grip and collapsed on my porch steps, having a full-blown tantrum. I looked at my mother and said, "Do you see? This is the result of the spoiled way you raised her." She glared at me once more before attempting to drag my sister off the porch. My sister clung to the porch handrails, repeatedly saying, "You promised me," over and over again. I couldn't help but laugh and told them both to never come back. My mother retaliated by flipping me the bird before continuing her attempt to drag my sister away. It took several minutes, but she eventually got my sister to stand up and leave, cursing me by calling me a cruel, heartless bastard who would go to hell for this. I laughed again and added, "There's also a special place in hell for liars and narcissists who try to manipulate others to get their way." My mother clenched her fists, about to say more, when I held up my smartphone again, still recording, and declared, "The clock is ticking, Mom. Get off my property." She then walked my sister to the car, gave me one last disdainful look, and drove off. I thought the ordeal was over, but letting things go was never something my mother would consider. A few days later, I began receiving messages from people I knew and some relatives online. Many were furious with me, while others had questions about what had transpired. I tried to check my Facebook, but couldn't see anything they were saying because my sister and mother had both blocked me on their social media accounts. However, my girlfriend could still view everything since they kept their profiles open. We took screenshots of all the posts and even printed some of them out. Both of their profiles contained posts accusing me of being a greedy, heartless bastard who had stolen the house meant to be my sister's inheritance, right out from under her by paying off the lawyer who handled my father's will, a complete and utter lie that they both knew. I contacted my lawyer, who was not only my attorney but also my father's lawyer and a trusted family friend. I provided him with copies of all the Facebook screenshots and the video my girlfriend had recorded the day my mother demanded my house. While he initially suggested just sending a formal cease and desist letter, I wanted to take more decisive action. He agreed to write a letter via express mail that required a signature upon delivery, ensuring they received it. On the same day the letter was delivered, my mother called me in an absolute fury. I told her that if she and my sister didn't remove all the false social media posts they had made about me and tell the absolute truth, I would share all the information I had with the entire family, her boss, and upload the videos we had recorded of her online. Additionally, I threatened to sue her. She called me unreasonable, insisting that she had acted solely for my sister's sake, and launched into a full-blown lecture, reiterating her belief that my sister needed my house more than I did. I bluntly told her that I didn't care what she thought and that if she didn't rectify everything and tell the truth, I would ensure her career was ruined. Begrudgingly, she conceded, saying, "Fine, you win. Have it your way and keep the house," before hanging up the phone. That very evening, all the deceitful posts vanished from both of their profiles. I was unblocked, and my mother offered a half-hearted apology, claiming she had acted prematurely because she believed my sister needed the house more than I did due to her financial struggles and pregnancy. However, according to my father's will, the house was rightfully mine, and she had known this even before his passing, giving her no right to attempt to claim it. As for my sister, she also apologized but mostly echoed everything our mother had said, blaming her actions on our mother and her pregnancy hormones. In the days that followed, replies flooded both my mother and sister's profiles, with many people expressing their anger towards them for trying to take my house. I received numerous messages of apology and regret from those who had previously believed her, but it became clear who was truly on her side from the beginning, as most of these supporters were from her side of the family. No one on my father's side believed her claims. Eventually, my sister and her boyfriend moved in with our mother to save money, but she confined them to the basement to maintain her Airbnb operations. My sister began crying on social media, lamenting that she couldn't live upstairs, and it seemed that she and her boyfriend were fighting with each other over the situation. All my sister did after that was complain online, and our mother barely posted anything on her social media anymore due to the backlash from her previous actions. If you found this story compelling and want to support my channel, please remember to subscribe, like, and share. Your support means the world to me and helps bring more stories like this to light.